Lesserafim are a high-quality group. And by that, I mean after watching their documentary and watching them practice 5 to 6 hours a day for their debut, rehearsing and rehearsing their dances over and over again, you can tell that Hybe put a lot of care and effort to ensure that their first girl group debuted with flying colours. After watching this documentary, I watched their fearless dance practice video, and their timing is impeccable. Their coaches ensured that they could perform to a high standard, and it shows. My sister even mentioned that after watching Yujin perform versus Lesserafim, there was a discrepancy in the quality of dance, and that is not to the fault of the members, but of the effort that Hybe poured into one group over the other, in terms of making Lesserafim practice for hours on end until the choreo was nailed. Things I noticed while watching the Lesserafim documentary: trigger warning for mentions of ED, so if that's alarming to you, then please skip over, and disclaimer, I'm a fan of Lesserafim. Now let's continue. The documentary was a good way of reintroducing the group, prepping us for their comeback in lieu of Karam's exit from the group. You can tell this was filmed when Karam was still part of the group, as Hybe has tried to edit her out and not make it too obvious, but some shots do seem a little awkward at times. However, it's understandable ultimately why they did it. Nonetheless, her presence or lack thereof is still tangible, and it's things like this that help explain why Hybe was so reluctant to remove her from the group. Logistically, it is difficult to remove a member, so companies try hard to avoid having to do so by any means necessary, unless the scandal is too big to ignore. The music stage performances, the behind-the-scenes footage, and most importantly, the merchandise made, would have to have been edited or removed in order to erase Karam's presence, which would have been a pain to do. Groups are very rigid post-debut, and companies are meticulous with choosing the members that ultimately get to debut, as they try to figure out if a group has chemistry, if the members suit the concept, and will fulfill the company's vision. Hybe selected her and debuted her, which means they valued what she brought to the table, and therefore this helps explain why Hybe tried so hard to keep her in the group. Furthermore, Karam was, out of the Lesserafim members, also chosen to be in the Drunk Dazed music video, and was used as the base for the character Sua in the enlightening webcomic Dark Moon, which kind of shows Hybe's particular favour towards her and that they valued her, which adds to the fact that they didn't want to let her go, but ultimately the public forced their hand and they let her go. What was interesting is that Hybe included Haruka, a trainee member who seemed to have good chemistry with the other members and was sweet, but ultimately was cut from the group and replaced by Kazuha. Hybe didn't need to include her in the documentary at all, but my tinfoil hat theory is that Hybe kept her in the documentary just in case they are considering adding her back to the group at some point to replace Karam's spot, if they require Lesserafim to have 6 members. Hybe haven't announced or hinted at anything, but this is simply just a theory, as it's difficult to shuffle members once a group has debuted, which is what a Hybe employee mentioned in the documentary. But it is interesting to notice how much they did shuffle right up to the group's debut, and that says something about the company being a factory-like well-oiled machine in terms of the manufacture of the group and its concept, as almost all the music was set up and prepared before even having a set lineup of members in the group. Hybe is stern and steadfast when it comes to debuting members that fit the group's concept, and they must have a certain image that fits. They mold and shape the members to suit the image they are trying to convey, and are not afraid to cut members who ultimately can't deliver or don't fit the group's image well enough, and can shuffle members right up to debut, which the documentary shows. Kind of happened with Haruka being replaced by Kazuha, who had to be whisked away from Germany in order to debut in Seoul. In the documentary, you feel for Kazuha, who seems like a fish out of water with the way her timid and shy disposition makes her feel both anxious and overwhelmed by the new environment, and got emotional with the girls in the practice room due to their dance teacher prodding Kazuha to reveal her true feelings, which I'm guessing was the instructor's way of trying to get the girls to look after each other and bond together, but it showed that Kazuha is a sensitive soul. Furthermore, it was interesting as Kazuha wasn't confident in her Korean language skills being Japanese, and Stray Kids' Felix was almost cut from the group due to his language abilities, or lack thereof. But it shows how desperately Hybe wanted Kazuha in the group, to bring her in so late to the game, and regardless of her language capabilities, it shows how talented she is and how Hybe knew they needed her in the group, as make no mistake, thanks to BTS's success, there is no way that Hybe has a shortage of talented people auditioning and training to debut under their label. So kudos to Kazuha and the rest of the girls for being selected, and I feel as though we've only scratched the surface of what each of them can do. Furthermore, the documentary showed Kazuha's love for ballet. She earnestly loves it, and I do hope that Hybe continues to explore her talent in ballet, which it seems like they have with the upcoming comeback teasers. Unlike SM, who gave up on Winwin, who was a classically trained dancer, which SM did very little to use to their advantage the more time went on. So I hope that Hybe utilizes Kazuha's skills. Furthermore, I also hope Yujin's skills as an instrument player and her ambitions of writing music doesn't go unnoticed by the company. It seems like she's being encouraged, as she has vlogged about it and even released a self-produced song called Raise Your Glass. So hopefully, Hybe can foster these individual talents, which should push the group forward, making it stand out from the other groups. And in terms of Yujin, she drew a lot of sympathy as someone who had been a trainee for quite a while, sacrificing years of her life to pursue her dream of becoming an idol, and be away from her family in another country for so long. The documentary showed her determination to succeed after going through rejection constantly, and that she was finally able to debut. It was a gripping story, and watching the Lesserafim comeback teasers, like Sakura, Yujin's years of training has given her some experience. She seems commanding on screen and well-versed and well-practiced in what she does, and I think she will be one to watch out for. And speaking of Sakura, she surprised me by her resilience. She stated that she felt insecure and worried about debuting again, wondering if it was a mistake. But I think it is nice that she got to debut again and seems to be a key pillar of the group. Furthermore, Chaewon, who had also debuted previously, seemed excited and curious about what her fans would think of her new concept and this new side of her. Chaewon seems to be quite bubbly and a ray of sunshine. She doesn't shy away from saying how difficult it is to be an idol in terms of the hours of practice and grueling training. But she seems to be getting on with it and doesn't seem to be insecure, which gives her an interesting character. And make no mistake, Hybe has also used these girls, their lives and their personal information through a committee to create the members' backstories, using the group's concept of being fearless to help explain the members' debut story and the story of their road to debut. It's genius, and it was very interesting listening to the members themselves discuss how their own personal stories relate to the group's concept and message. It was interesting to hear how well thought out it all was. Of course, it could be seen as turning members' personal lives into commodities, creating a brand not only as the group, but a brand for each member with a believable and sellable concept. But it could add to the strength of Lesserafim as a group, showing where each member came from and their struggles to get to this point, through determination and fearlessness, to follow through with their dreams. It didn't seem like the members had no say in this, and were actively participating in the moulding and telling of their own story. Furthermore, the criticisms of Hybe particularly have been that the company has turned into an idol-making factory, pumping out groups with each season, especially since they released that promise to debut something like 6 to 9 groups within the next year, which seems excessive to some and somewhat soulless. But watching documentaries like these and behind-the-scenes footage, and especially watching a group come together, whether that be through a documentary or even a competition show, like the recent formation of And Team, There are real human beings behind these groups with hopes and dreams who work relentlessly and tirelessly to achieve their goal to debut. Because, as said previously, Hybe in particular have no shortage of talented people who want to become trainees and debut. You have to be very talented in order to pass these tests. But the documentary shows that it doesn't just end there. You have to remember that in order to earn your place after debut, you have to work twice as hard. This documentary showed the mental turmoil that these girls go through to maintain a certain level that is expected of them. And unfortunately, it also means the maintenance of their bodies. And you can see the stress and turmoil they go through the moment the group are called into a meeting. This meeting was called a day after a photo shoot for the group's debut showcase. It's Sakura who snaps when they receive feedback, as the committee stated that some of the members were not looking after themselves, i.e., staying as thin as they should be. Perhaps they were speaking more civilly as the cameras were on, so they didn't name particular names. The company wanted to put them all on a diet, and it was Sakura who probably had experienced something like this before, and the stress that it often places on other members, defended the group and stated that an entire strict meal plan for the group wasn't necessary, and that they could take care of themselves and monitor their own diets. It shows an inner strength Sakura has, and it was admirable that she spoke up for the younger members. But it does also show you how important body weight is in the industry, and one could imagine how stressful it is to live every day with the idea of weight fluctuation on everyone's minds. You hear stories about trainees being measured weekly in front of all the other trainees and staff, but the documentary helped validate those points. And what's more, in the dance practice room itself that the girls were in, you even see a weigh-in machine. It's not used in the documentary, but its presence in the room would be triggering enough, and it is unclear if it has or been used in that sort of weekly weigh-in session kind of way. Regardless, just seeing that weight machine day in and day out in the practice room you spend hours in must be triggering. Throughout the documentary, you do notice that almost every time the girls are eating, it is a salad they're consuming. But of course, they are gearing up for a debut, and to eat any meal is better than eating nothing at all, and salads are healthy. But it says a lot about the mindfulness and anxiety that goes around bodies and weight in Kpop. And in terms of being self-conscious, Sakura, while practicing, refused to pull a quote ugly face, to let herself relax while performing and get into the performance, for fear of looking ugly, because she told the coach that she already felt like she looked bad, which the coach vehemently denied, stating that Sakura would look good even if she was trying to look bad, and that she could let loose, which Sakura found hard to believe. It shows the mental turmoil that goes on in just one member's head in terms of self-image and self-negative talk. It's interesting because on one hand, it seems like the company want their teams to be okay and work as one and help and support each other. But conversely, their vocal coach spoke to Kazuha and specifically stated in her interview that she wanted Kazuha to feel jealous and competitive towards the other members. As Kazuha was the latest addition to the group, the coach said that she was the furthest behind, and so, in order to spur Kazuha on, she wanted her to see the other members as competitors, comparing her against them, as that would spur her on to work harder, to push herself so that she could improve quicker and keep up with the other members. This coach probably isn't the only one who uses these kinds of tactics. Yes, it can spur people on to improve, but it can also be a major source of anxiety, especially if it's done continuously. And judging from the fact that Kazuha broke down in tears during a talk with the whole group and their dance instructor, it builds up a lot of pressure and can isolate the members from each other rather than encouraging them to work as a team. And we've seen how many bullying scandals occur within especially girl groups due to the encouragement of comparing and competitive behavior. And I wonder if it is this kind of talk from members of staff that ultimately spurs on this behavior. And encouraging healthy competition can lead to people pulling all-nighters, forcing themselves to practice more and more until they're entirely burnt out and injure themselves, and then some, until they're entirely burnt out and end up injuring themselves, all to either catch up to the other members in the group or to beat them in order to receive compliments and favors from the staff. Because what if losing an extra pound earns you more praise from the staff? What if you become more popular because of it? It can become a toxic process, especially when you start getting rewarded through your dangerous efforts by receiving more modeling contracts and opportunities for solo endeavors. Furthermore, NCT's Taeyong mentioned on his bubble one time during a particular bad episode he was having that he remembers his managers and the company telling him early on that if NCT failed, it would be his fault. If the group didn't succeed, then that was on him. Of course, this did spur him on to work even harder, but the fact that he still remembers those words to this day shows the mental effect that they had on him. He even mentioned that the members discuss and compare their individual popularity within the group, and how it causes anxiety among the members who believe they are less popular. This kind of behavior makes me think if comparison was a behavior that was encouraged early on in their careers by the staff to further spur them on and make them want to improve themselves, all in the name of healthy competition, in order to improve the members individually and as a unit. But hopefully Lesserafim doesn't fall into this, and so far the girls seem to help and encourage each other, which is nice. Having someone like Sakura, for instance, who is willing to defend the girls from their agency due to her experience, is a good thing. Hopefully Hybe is considering the mental health of their idols. For example, in Hypin Sunu was excused from performances due to fatigue, and a reason for BTS's hiatus was to give them a well-earned rest. And trainee A's Leo was experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety, and the company allowed him to leave because of it. Yujin herself did mention a therapist in the documentary, but it is unclear if Hybe arranged the therapy session for her, or if it's routine or mandatory for all idols in the company to attend a therapy session. But if so, that shows perhaps companies are taking a step forward in the right direction in terms of helping the idol's mental state. Furthermore, there does seem to be some sort of closeness between the coaches and the members themselves. For instance, their dance instructor did make Chaewon cry while critiquing her dance, but there was some tenderness there as she gave Chaewon words of comfort while pushing her to reach her full potential. So yes, the industry is intensely manufactured, groups are manufactured, but these companies provide a product or service to fans, and these girls are the product. They have to deliver. They have to work and put in the hours to do their job well. It's not easy. Not just this documentary, but many K-pop group documentaries beforehand have shown that sleep needs to be sacrificed, physiques need to be maintained, and these human beings have to constantly work to refine themselves while having a personal life that is kept private. Every inch of them is not only criticized by the public, but by the fans. And this documentary showed that the critiques also come from within their own company. Through meticulous coaches and review meetings, they will be reprimanded if they do not look or perform as expected. And that can be seen through the Howling show that aired and Island, which formed both Enhypen and team. And I think there was even more pressure on Lesserafim being Hybe's first girl group. They wanted perfection, which is why the Karam scandal was such a stumbling block for a seemingly meticulous company. I don't think it was Hybe's intention, but the company did come off as feeling soulless, and they do nothing to help their case in terms of debuting groups like products in a factory line. But what drew empathy were the girls themselves. It showed their mental struggles, stress, and turmoil that they went through simply to debut. However, Lesserafim have finally made it. They had a strong debut and a regrettable scandal, but their comeback looks good and I look forward to it. Hybe clearly values the group and wants them to be successful. So let's see if that happens on a global scale. But what do you think?